So we're in Luke 12, 13 to 34. So let's read and I'll comment as we go along. Someone in the crowd said to Jesus, "Teacher, tell my brother to divide the inheritance with me." Have you ever been in an inheritance dispute? I was aware of one man who had very lovingly cared for his mother through the latter years of her life. He'd been over regularly, helped with the garden, and made sure he visited on a regular basis. Other members of the family had been less involved. And then as she neared the end of her life, suddenly the members of the family began to take a greater interest and spent more time with her. When it came to the giving of the will, the son who'd been regular over the years had been written out of the will. It would seem by the influence of others, and that's very painful. And do you dispute that? What do you do? How do you advise in that situation? And so often there are family disputes over inheritance. And this man comes to Jesus, says, "Tell my brother to divide the inheritance." Inheritance is a big source of money often, isn't it? If it's a house that's being divided or land, it can make a significant difference to the material prosperity of individuals. And so this man comes to Jesus, "Tell my brother to divide the inheritance." Jesus' reply is quite shocking. Jesus replied, "Man, who appointed me a judge or an arbiter between you? Not come for that." Then he said to them, "Watch out. Be on your guard against all kinds of greed. Life does not consist in an abundance of possessions." Just stop and listen to that sentence for a moment. In a sense, we know it, don't we? Life isn't about stuff. But with Amazon orders going through the roof in lockdown, what we believe and the way we behave aren't necessarily lined up. And then Jesus tells this story. He told them this parable. The ground of a certain man yielded an abundant harvest. He thought to himself, what would you be thinking at this point? What shall I do? I have no place to store my crops. Then he said, this is what I'll do. I'll tear down my barn and build bigger ones. And there I will store my surplus grain. And I'll say to myself, you have plenty of grain laid up for many years. Take life easy, eat, drink, and be merry. But God said to him, you fool, this very night your life will be demanded from you. Who will get what you have prepared for yourself? This is how it will be with whoever stores up things for themselves, but is not rich towards God. Now, there seems great wisdom, doesn't there, in having a pension? We are constantly reinforced today that that's an important thing, and the government has sought to facilitate that with all the pension stuff that comes with employment in them. That preparation for our retirement years will be in place. In the book of Proverbs, it commends those who prepare in the summer for the winter. But Jesus is not challenging that teaching. Listen to his words and understand where the arrow is pointing, if you like, of conviction. You fool, this very night your life will be demanded from you. Then who will get what you have prepared for yourself? This is how it will be for whoever stores up things for themselves, but is not rich towards God. See, as you think about that lens, that it's all about him, go back and read the parable. And this man's bumper harvest produces a response which is all about I. This is what I'll do. I will tear down my barns and build bigger ones. I will store my surplus grain. I'll say to myself, you have plenty of grain laid up for many years. Take life easy, eat, drink, and be merry. Not one mention of God, no thanksgiving to God for the bumper harvest, no consciousness of being a steward of the things that God has given him, no concern for any other individual. No sense of, wow, God has blessed me. How can I share this? How can I help those in need? Who can I be looking out for with all this extra stuff? No, it's me, me, me. And as this man has come to Jesus saying, tell my brother to divide the inheritance, Jesus is basically warning that it's so easy to get sucked into this me-centeredness when it comes to money. For all the justifiable causes that we may feel we've been cheated out of what is rightfully ours, again, that's the language that betrays the problem. So we don't know when our lives will be demanded of us. We don't know when life will end, what use will be stuff when that comes. And so Jesus says, actually, we need to be rich towards God. Well, how is that? Well, it's rich in faith in Christ, rich in his grace to us. It's riches that result as we live lives that love God and love others, that will bear fruit, so that when we're welcomed in, we will have been seen faithful with what we had. So our lens has to be God-centered, other-centered, rather than self-centered. So that's all very well if you talk about inheritance and lots of money. What happens when we're feeling the pinch, when life is tight? And for many of us, that may well be around the corner with the current state of the economy. Well, then Jesus, on the flip side, goes on to say, then Jesus said to his disciples, therefore I tell you, do not worry about your life, what you shall eat, or about your body, what you will wear. For life is more than food, and the body more than clothes. Consider the ravens, they do not sow or reap, they have no storeroom or barn, yet God feeds them. And how much more valuable you are than birds. Who of you by worrying can add a single hour to your life? Since you cannot do this very little thing, why do you worry about the rest? Consider how the wild flowers grow. They do not labor or spin. Yet I tell you, not even Solomon in all his splendor was dressed like one of these. If that is how God clothes the grass of the field, which is here today and tomorrow is thrown into the fire, how much more will he clothe you, you of little faith? And do not set your heart on what you will eat or drink. Do not worry about it. For the pagan world runs after all such things, and your Father knows that you need them. But seek his kingdom, and these things will be given to you as well. Do not be afraid, little flock, for your Father has been pleased to give you the kingdom. Sell your possessions and give to the poor. Provide purses for yourselves that will not wear out, a treasure in heaven that will never fail, where no thief comes near and no moth destroys. For where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. These words are striking because they challenge us about our expectations. There's a scale of need that's quite well known. I can't remember the name of it now. Kind of pyramid, and the more you have, the further away you move from the basic needs and desires. Jesus says actually, he hones in. It's food and clothing that's necessary for life. That's the baseline of need here. And even of those things, Jesus says, don't worry about what you will eat or what you will wear. Look at the animal kingdom around you and the created world around you. They don't go short of food and they don't go short of splendor. And yet you're much more valuable than all of those. So learn the lesson of God's provision for his creation, and therefore even more so his provision for his people. And then there's a challenge about worry. Does worry add a single hour to our life? Well, actually, medically, worry robs us of life. Anxiety has all sorts of negative impacts. And so Jesus says, look, if that's the case with worry, don't go there. If you can't extend your life through worrying, don't worry about the other things. Trust. And how do you trust? It's by pursuing the kingdom. Verse 31, seek his kingdom and these things will be given you as well. And then he says, verse 32, do not be afraid, little flock, for your Father has been pleased to give you the kingdom. He's given you the greatest inheritance possible, to be a co-heir with Christ, an inheritor of God's kingdom, of that secure future, that new heavens and that new earth in which there is no more death, pain, sin or sorrow. And because we have that secure future, because we know where we're going, even if we're robbed of life in this world, we can then actually be more generous with life in this world. He says, sell your possessions, give to the poor. We can generously give of what we've got. That happens in the New Testament as we see the churches giving sacrificially to meet the needs of others. Actually, the purse we need to be providing for is not the pension pot, and I'm not decrying the use of pensions. That's a good thing to have. It is a wise thing to have, but actually, the purse we really need to be worried about is the treasure in heaven that will never fail, that can't be lost. You see, pensions get wiped out. Jane's parents lost their pensions in one of the economic crashes. That there's nothing secure about any possessions in this world, but actually there is in the future. And so Jesus finishes with this statement of verse 34, for where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. Check where your heart is, because that will tell you where your treasure is. These are challenging words, aren't they? And I think they're going to become more challenging in the days that lie ahead. So let's ask God's help to put these into practice.